Welcome back. This is part two of an ongoing series of basically how to take Lightwave assets and put them in Unity, and we're trying to build a photorealistic room that basically resembles this panoramic fully rendered 360 version that we did using Ubercam. And this is Chris Bronson's excellent cafe scene, which he has donated to the cause, and I can't thank him enough. This scene is just gorgeous. So today what I want to look at is we're basically going to do the same thing that we did yesterday with chairs. And today we're going to do something a little different, and that is work with a table. Now, one of the main questions I keep getting asked is, after the last video, people wondering, why is it that I had one big Lightwave scene file that I exported, and then now I'm doing everything in Modeler? Why am I not, fixing everything in Lightwave and putting it into and exporting it into Unity at one time? And the simple reason is this. This part of what I'm trying to show you is how I would do this in this exact case where I've been given an asset, in this case an entire Lightwave scene file that's completed, and I'm trying to match that in Unity. If I were going to do this from scratch, then I probably would start and go through everything in here and basically do everything in Lightwave and Modeler, make sure everything looks right, make sure all the surfaces are right, UV'd out, and then use a surface baking camera to bake out a whole lot of these surfaces. That would make the most sense, and that's the fastest way to do it. If you have, in my opinion, a relatively small scene that you want to work with, but the larger the scene gets, the more human error comes into play. And I know from experience that I am terrible at actually getting all of this stuff to work on the first shot. You may be incredible at it. This may be just a child's play to you. If that's the case, by all means, do all of this stuff in layout first, and then dump it straight into Unity when it's perfect. I'm not like that. In my case, I tend to build things and put them in Unity, and they're horribly wrong, and then I have to go back and fix them over and over and over. This one scene to export from Lightwave into FBX takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And then to import into Unity, it takes about 1 to 2 minutes. So we're looking at roughly about 5 minutes of me just sitting here twiddling my thumbs while my computer's locked up, doing other stuff. And of course, if I go do something else, like try to render something and end up taking more of the CPU time, then it's going to take even longer for it to export. So that's not really an option. So what I'm trying to do here is I used layout. I exported the whole thing straight from layout into Lightwave, and then I'm going through it and basically looking for individual parts that I want to replace, and I'm working with those parts individually in a combination of, at this time, it's a combination of Modeler and Unity. Now, later, we're going to get into using layout and some rendering stuff in a later video. But for right now, I'm sticking with this combination of Modeler, Unity, and I used the layout objects as a guide. So yesterday, in the previous video, what I did was I went and showed you how to do these green chairs. And using the exact same technique, I also did these brown chairs. This was not in the video. I just did this earlier. And basically what I did was I did exactly the same thing I did yesterday. And we're going to do it again right now just so you can see that whole workflow. In today's case, I'm going to use this table object. Now, this is a little different in that this table object is comprised of chairs and a table, and it's entirely possible that this one object is more than one. I mean, it's actually just one mesh, but it looks like it's one mesh with it looks like it's a mesh parent system here, where we have a table as the parent, and then each of these chairs sits underneath it. Again, this is not a scene that I'm familiar with. I'm showing you how to do this if you're not already familiar with the models in the scene. FRN6A is the parent. FRN21 is the child. Let's take a look here at the layout in the scene editor. Yeah, FRN6A is this, and here are the child objects here. See? So it's a one-to-one match. That makes it really easy for me to go into Modeler and actually work with these objects. So the first thing we want to do is we want to see what we can do about this table. And I'm just going to hit Modeler, so it's currently selected. And there's our object, there's our model. Looks pretty nice. And on this model we have a base that just has a color, a tabletop with a texture, and what appears to be a UV map. Nope, just a projection, cube projection. And what else do we have? Wood that is also using cubic projection and not a UV map. Okay, so it's possible there's no UV map on this. Let's take a look. There is none. That's going to be a problem. If we take this into Unity and try to apply a texture, what you're going to see is this. Let's say wood, for example. Let's go ahead and set this up as if we had a UV map. All right, so here in Modeler, if I open the surface editor and take a look at the wood countertop, we see that it's wood fine 0031. Okay, so we go into Unity, and since we imported the entire folder, wood fine, we know that we have this in here, 0031. That's this one. Okay, and that this is probably the material that uses it. Yep, that's my guess. So let's just select that, and we'll do this. We'll drag this into here. Okay, so that gave us our chairs. That's not what we wanted though. We want the one on this mesh tabletop. And that should be our tabletop. But notice that it's flat. The reason it's flat is because Unity can't figure out how it's supposed to apply this texture. There's no UV map. And Unity doesn't have the concept of cubic projection or any of the other types of projection. It only has UV maps. So we need to go in here and create a UV map. And the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is to select all of the surface that shares that UV map. So we're going to go to Selection, select Entire Surface. Okay, and we're just going to create a UV map. Oops, not that one. And we're going to call this Tabletop. No particular reason. The map type, I'm going to set it to Atlas. Okay, so basically now we have our Atlas map here. This right here, the part underneath it, looks like a good candidate for a cylindrical map. So we'll do that. We're going to use the same tabletop, and we're going to basically do this. We're just going to say create UV texture map, and we want it to be a tabletop. And this time we're going to do cylindrical along the y-axis. And let's see how that looks. Looks pretty good. Okay, so I'd say that this table is now done. Save it. And we're going to export just this object. 2014. And we're going to dump it right into this folder. Let's see if it actually imported it. Or exported it. Sometimes Lightwave doesn't export the tables, export things properly. And it did. Fantastic. Okay, so what we want to do, again, just like last time, here's the project folder, or the project section. The project section, if you do reveal and finder for any object in it, you'll find, if you go up the hierarchy, that projects, this section here, is identical to everything in this folder in the assets folder. So if you were to open the sample projects, for example, everything in assets, this folder right here, will be exactly the same as everything in project. This is a one-to-one mapping. Now, Unity does an incredible job of just keeping track of file changes here. So anything you drag into this folder or any subfolder will instantly be updated here in Unity. We're going to go into our models, and we can see that FRN6A is what we just exported. It's right here. So FRN6A, click that, and again we want to calculate our normals, and in this case, I don't know, 75 is probably fine. Everything here appears to be fine, and what we're going to do is the hierarchy here is identical to, let me just show you this, the scene. These two are the same, the scene and the hierarchy. Hierarchy is everything in the scene in list form. And the scene is everything in the hierarchy in visual form. So we want to take an asset from our projects folder and basically put it into the scene. And we want to parent it to this table in this case. Because we have the replacement table, we want to put it in exactly the same place. And the easiest, fastest way to do that is to take the model and dump it straight into that object, the root of that object. And it will set all the zeros here. So it's a one-to-one mapping. And basically it's just going to replace that. If I go to this object and turn off the mesh renderer, normally, let me show you what that looks like. If I turn off the mesh renderer for an object, you won't be able to see it. Okay? So if I go to this object here and turn off the mesh renderer, you'll see that it disappears. And what it's doing right now, we have a Z fighting issue because we have these two exact models where it's not sure which of the two textures to show. But just for the sake of showing this, we're doing this, we're just going to turn off the mesh renderer. So now it's showing our new model here. Now one thing you'll notice is the scaling of the texture is different in Modeler and Layout than it is here in Unity. Now there are some things we can do to change that here in Modeler. One is we can scale the UV map itself. Another is that we could change the texture, probably at least double this. So let's start with double this. Tilet double. That is the wrong one. That's the one for the chairs. Tilet double on this one. That looks a little closer. We'll circle back around and get that later. Let's also get these, let's get the cushions for the chairs. So if we go back into Layout, we take a look at these chairs. Again, as we found out in Unity, these are FRN21. So here in Layout, if we select one of the chairs, actually if we just select it here like this, hit Modeler, it will open that in Modeler. And we can see we got this really cool pattern along the back of it. We want to open Surface Editor and take a look at that. Okay, so the cushion, it looks like we have two different cushion surfaces and a wood surface. The wood surface is using a specular and a bump map, and the cushion is not. The cushion is just using a cubic, and I wonder if we have a UV map on this. We appear to. Fantastic. So let's export. Actually, we don't need to export this chair. This chair is already set up. We just need to actually match the texture in Unity. And for that matter, well, we needed to create a UV map for the table earlier. If the table had a UV map, we wouldn't have needed to do that. But in this case, we do need to fill both of these cushion objects. Now they both have a UV map in theory, so this should be pretty straightforward. We just need to figure out what material that is, and we go into the Surface Editor and take a look. Cushion is FRN21 fabric. Well, Chris did a fantastic job of naming all of this stuff, so I could have guessed that FRN21 because that's the name of the object. I'm going to drag this into this. That doesn't look good. I fear that we need to create a UV map for those. And it does have a UV map for the top one. So on the top object, we want a yellow stripe down the middle, two green stripes, yellow stripe, and a green stripe. So let's try doubling this up and see how that looks. Tripling it. Tripling it looks pretty close. Okay, so it goes yellow, green, green, yellow, and then part of green. Yellow, okay, so a little more. There we go.